So thank you all for joining me today. So I can talk about sleep and stress and how it affects the body. But essentially, we're talking about this because sleep is a really important risk factor for disease, or it can be if you're not sleeping enough. And of course, stress can definitely be a risk factor for disease if you are not taking care of yourself well, if you don't have good strategies to mitigate the stress. And then of course, right now with kind of the very stressful situation going on, we want to address that and make sure that you have good strategies in place to learn how to manage your stress. So it looks like without further ado, we can kind of begin the presentation here. So I like to start off with this quote. It is spoken by Dr. William Dement, who is the founder of the Sleep Research Center at Stanford University. I think it's an important little indicator here. Sleep is the most important predictor of how long you will live, perhaps even more important than if you smoke, exercise, or have high blood pressure or high cholesterol. I like to point out that this gentleman is 88 years old, so perhaps we have something to learn from him. And of course, that's a pretty telling sign that, more important than something that we know causes chronic disease, like for example, smoking. And we know exercise is really important. So we just want to, make sure that we understand the importance of sleep. So today we will discuss, we're going to go over the National Sleep Foundation's recommendations for sleep duration. We'll talk about hormones associated with hunger and satiety, kind of talking about how sleep affects appetite. We'll talk about some nutrition tips associated with better sleep. And then of course, talking about different foods and things that are associated with sleep and stress and sort of how we can mitigate that. So sleep and stress. It's important to balance these two things in your life. We need adequate sleep every single night. Even one night of sleep deprivation, we see some problems and little issues. And you also need to find ways to balance stress, because stress is a good thing. We need just a little bit, but too much can, of course, cause some long-term chronic disease. We do have some handouts we'll try to get to you guys at some point here, just to kind of emphasize these points. We'll talk about strategies to improve sleep quality and suggestions for stress management. So how much are we sleeping? We spend about a third of our lives sleeping, hopefully. The average American sleeps only about 6.5 hours, which leaves at least half of Americans sleep deprived. So 6.5 hours is not quite enough. We need just a little bit more than that. And we do see consequences in our health with just 6.5 hours or less of sleep each night. So half of Americans are sleep deprived. With that, between 50 and 70 million Americans suffer from some type of sleep disorder. That is, insomnia is probably the most popular one, but of course there's many, many others. Also, obstructive sleep apnea is one of those that I think many people suffer from. And of course, sleep is essential. It's for short-term health, long-term health, not only health of your body, but also kind of mental capacities and relationships and things like that. So we'll talk just a little bit more about those. So sleep duration recommendations. How much sleep do we need each night? Well, it sort of depends on your age. Basically, if you are an adult, we need at least 8 hours of sleep each night. Well, at least 7 hours of sleep each night, ideally 8, but up to 9. You don't really want more than 9 hours of sleep each night. As you age, you can do closer to 7 to 8. You don't want to get too much, but of course you definitely don't want to get too little. Younger children, teenagers, they need quite a bit more. So how do you know if you're getting enough sleep at night besides just asking yourself, am I sleeping for these 7 or 8 hours each night? Do you need an alarm clock every single morning when you wake up? Can you get through the day without feeling really drowsy? Normally, when I do this in classroom setting, I like to ask a show of hands. How many of you got at least 7 hours of sleep each night? And it's pretty staggering. The numbers are usually very low. Again, 50% of us not getting enough sleep each night. So really trying to emphasize the importance of getting at least 7 hours every single night. So kind of continuing on here, can you get through the day without becoming irritated or distracted around 3 o'clock? Are you getting into that slump where you really need more coffee, or you're kind of getting ready for a nap? And of course, can you sit through this entire presentation without dozing off? I'll never know. So I guess we'll see, and it'll be up to you to determine that. So sleep-wake homeostasis, we'll kind of get into the science here, what's going on in our bodies. We have 2 cycles that regulate our sleep. We have the sleep-wake homeostasis cycle and our circadian rhythm. So the sleep-wake homeostasis cycle is our body's way of striving for homeostasis all the time. We always want balance. Bodies never want to be too hungry, too full, too hot, too cold, too anything. Bodies really don't like anything to the extreme. So it's the body's job to ensure balance by releasing chemicals to consistently maintain this homeostatic pattern. And of course, hormones and things like that as well. One method of managing this pattern is the circadian rhythm, which releases timed chemicals to regulate your appetite, your sleepiness, basically your desire to do anything, and to maintain this homeostasis. So if you get too cold, your body releases chemicals to ensure that your temperature remains consistent all the time. If you're awake too long, your sleep-wake homeostasis tells us that there's a need for sleep and it's accumulating. And also, if you have been asleep for too long, again, this system is in place to kind of protect you from getting too much or too little of anything. The circadian rhythm, I'm sure many of you have heard of this before. It's our body's 24-hour internal clock. And it's regulated by a really fun word called a suprachiasmatic nucleus. So this is a group of cells that sit right behind the eyeballs, basically, or right behind the nerve that controls your eyeballs. So the circadian rhythm is managed by lightness and darkness entering your environment. So for adults, we get really sleepy, or our strongest sleep occurs between 2 and 4 a.m. and again in the afternoon between 1 and 3 p.m., which is why a lot of people feel pretty sleepy around 3 o'clock or so, right after lunch, or wanting a little nap or a little pick-me-up, or some coffee, something like that, because that's actually the time when our circadian rhythm tells us, yeah, it's time to kind of relax a little bit. So it's affected by how rested we are. And if you are more sleep deprived, you are more tired within these hours. So going back to that suprachiasmatic nucleus, that group of cells that's regulated by lightness and darkness, around sunrise, your body starts to realize, okay, it's about time to wake up. Light is entering. The circadian rhythm tells us, okay, it's time to release a little bit of cortisol, that hormone that kind of wakes us up a little bit. And then, of course, when it's becoming dark out, it tells your body, hey, it's time to kind of calm down. Let's release some melatonin. So all of these hormones and chemicals are regulated by these patterns in our bodies, which of course can get disrupted. So, they're regulating your temperature, they're regulating, all functions and factors that are going to wake you up and do things. But let's say you go on a trip to, I don't know, Europe or China or something, and you're jet lagged. Your body doesn't understand the timing because this 24-hour clock has really been disrupted. Other things that can disrupt it, napping during the day, your timing of exercise if you're working out too late at night, even meal time. So basically, if you do something out of your normal pattern, this 24-hour clock gets a little disrupted and gets really confused and doesn't know when to release those hormones and chemicals to kind of get your pattern back on track. So of course, when you're jet lagged, you need a couple of days to kind of recover from that normally. And some people use melatonin, the hormone that gets your body ready for sleep, to help kind of stimulate that and get that pattern back on track. So stages of sleep, this is probably my most favorite topic because it's really interesting to see what happens during each stage of sleep. I'm sure you've heard of REM sleep, but maybe you haven't heard that there are actually 5 stages of sleep. And it takes about 90 minutes to go through all 5 stages. So you go through this cycle several times throughout the night. Of course, it takes a few minutes to kind of fall asleep. The first stage, you're kind of just a little sleepy. Your temperature might start to change a little bit. You're easily awoken. It's really a shallow, fragmented sleep. But it takes about 15 minutes to get into that. Also, stage 2 sleep, pretty similar. You're easily awoken. It's not very restorative. But as we age, we spend more time in stage 2 of sleep. So some people notice as they age, it becomes harder to get a good night's sleep. So all the more important to keep your sleep environment healthy. Stages 3 and 4, these are the most restorative stages. This is where your heart rate, your breathing, and your blood pressure all drop. Your muscles become relaxed and energy is restored. A lot of chemicals and hormones are replenished during this time. So this stage 3 to 4, we only spend about 15 minutes or so maximum in these 2 stages, but they're very important for replenishing those chemicals and hormones that you're going to need later in the day. Stage 5 sleep, you've probably heard of this one before, REM sleep. You've probably seen your cat or dog in this stage where their eyeballs are moving really rapidly. Maybe they're kind of making little noises, or their skin's moving a little bit. So you see a little bit of movement in this stage. This stage is also very important. This is the stage where we where we dream at night. So your eyes begin moving really rapidly, your blood pressure and breathing increase, your muscles become temporarily paralyzed because you're dreaming. You don't want to be acting out your dreams, so the body releases a chemical to stop you from moving. This is also the stage where memories are consolidated. So brain activity is really high. This is going to promote learning for the next day. It stimulates the area of the brain associated with memory. So it's going to help you consolidate all of the things that you learned throughout the day or that you experienced throughout the day and turn them into memories. You can see why this stage is so vital, because without consolidation of memories, well, you really can't do much. You can't recall what you have participated in. You can't know how to do your job the next day, whatnot. Really interesting study done on rats. Researchers deprived them of just REM sleep for a couple of weeks. And the researchers found that it decreased their lifespan from 2 to 3 years to just 5 weeks. So this stage is absolutely vital for our attention, our happiness, our ability to just kind of live a healthful life. Rats deprived of all sleep only lived 3 weeks. Obviously, this was kind of a cruel experiment, but it just demonstrates the importance of sleep, and specifically stage 5 sleep. Interesting little fact, alcohol actually decreases the time you spend in REM sleep, thus decreasing this restorative phases of this stage. So trying to avoid alcohol overall, but specifically trying to avoid alcohol close to bedtime. Even though it makes you feel sleepy, it actually really diminishes your quality of sleep. So sleep and overall health. We can kind of talk about what happens to your overall health when you don't get enough sleep. So most of this research is looking at people who get 6 hours or less a night, but close to 5 to 6 hours. So sleep, lack of sleep, it can affect your physical health, your mental health, your quality of life, and then of course your safety and well-being. So physical health, sleep helps to heal and repair blood vessels, the heart, basically all muscles, and deficiency is linked to an increased risk for heart disease, kidney disease, diabetes, and stroke. So this is a consistent lack of sleep, about 6 hours or so each night, pretty regularly to get to chronic disease like that. It can also affect your hormone balance and can lead to obesity because of the hormones associated with hunger and fullness. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. For growth and development, it triggers the body to release the hormone associated with normal growth in children and also muscle growth in adults. So let's say you're working out really hard every night, but you're only getting 6 hours of sleep. Your body cannot build the muscles needed to kind of create that increase in metabolism and all of that stuff, because it simply can't replenish the hormones that do that job. Your immune system, pretty relevant right about now. We need our immune system to fight off infections. I recently read a study that talked about one cell that is particularly involved in the immune system, and even just one night of sleep deprivation greatly diminishes those cells and your body's ability to fight off infection. So sleep right now is probably more important than ever when we have the coronavirus kind of impeding our ability to kind of live a normal life. But we really want to promote our immune system at this time. So that's all for physical health. Mental health, brain function, your emotional well-being. Anyone who's ever been sleepy for one night, I'm sure, can attest to this. You are kind of crabby the next day. Nobody feels great after a poor night's sleep. We're just unable to have those strong connections with other people. It's harder to communicate. It's harder to understand another person's point of view, just because your body is trying to deal with its own self, trying to improve its own health. It's too hard to build those bonds with other people when you are sleep deprived. And a lot of my research came from, I did a 3-month research study on people with mental illness, and I found that it was lack of sleep greatly increased symptoms of mental illness. So we can see just overall mental health, with or without any mental conditions, we see many more problems with a lack of sleep. Quality of life. So performance at work, I kind of touched on this with mental health. We're not able to perform well. We're not able to recall all of those important things that we learned the day before if you didn't get enough sleep at night. Your social interactions are limited. It's just sort of harder in general to care for yourself and have a high quality of life, because your relationships suffer with chronic lack of sleep. And then, of course, safety. So being present in conversations, recall them at a later date, functioning throughout the day, being productive, having a quick reaction time, making fewer mistakes. One example I like to use is driving. We see that drunk driving is as dangerous as driving with lack of sleep. One study I looked at people who had 24 hours of sleep deprivation. So maybe they got up really early one morning and went to bed really late at night. And it was as dangerous as drunk driving at the legal limit of 0.08%. So it can be very, very dangerous to have not enough sleep at night. So consequences of not enough sleep. Studies have looked at less than 5 to 6 hours of sleep and longer than 9 hours of sleep, and found a relationship with altered blood glucose levels and insulin metabolism, which basically says you are at a greater risk for diabetes if you sleep less than 5 to 6 hours or longer than 9 hours, which is an interesting little phenomenon there, that too much sleep can actually have the same consequences as too little sleep. So just a reminder, getting into that pattern of sleeping, 7 to 8 hours every single night, rather than getting poor sleep all week and then trying to, say, catch up on sleep later in the week or maybe on the weekend. It actually is very ineffective. We can't really catch up on sleep, because you can only replenish hormones to a certain degree. You can only replenish chemicals to a certain degree. So it is really important to try to build those patterns of adequate sleep every single night, rather than not enough and then trying to play catch up. So again, consequences of not enough sleep. It can actually affect your hunger and satiety hormones. It can make you feel hungrier to have not enough sleep, and it's harder to become full. And I'll talk about those hormones in a little bit more detail later. But essentially, people who get 6 hours or less every night consistently eat about 250 additional calories in the day, which may not feel like much, but it can really add up. Over a year, it's about 20 pounds. So, so certainly it can affect our weight, but also, you know, quality of life as well. So in addition to increased risk for diabetes, I kind of talked about the increased risk for heart disease because sleep repairs those body tissues, repairs your blood vessels, repairs your muscles and your heart cells. But also, not enough sleep increases stress hormones, which also increase your risk for heart disease or heart disease. We talked about the immune response, so your body is just not capable of fighting off disease quite as well. Increased rates of illness and depression. Illness overall, that's looking at chronic disease, that's looking at just acute conditions, getting a common cold, for example. It's harder to concentrate and learn new things. That's again because in stage 5, that's where we're consolidating memories and preparing your body to prepare or to work the next day and to learn new things the next day. If you don't get enough sleep, you're feeling tired. So participating in more sedentary behaviors. Of course, we're not moving as much. I think that's, you know, kind of understood. And then it can also decrease your metabolism. So we always want our metabolism to be optimized. We want our metabolism to be fast. I'm sure you've heard that before. We want a fast metabolism. That means that your body is able to burn energy at a faster pace. So you can eat more calories and you burn them off faster. Your body utilizes that energy well. Without enough sleep, it decreases your metabolism, which leads to a decreased energy expenditure. We're not burning as many calories, and that can lead to weight gain. So here's where we'll go into the hormones, and this is my favorite part, but it's very sciencey, so bear with me here. And again, if you have questions, we can go over them at the end when I can actually see that Q&A portion. So the first hormone to talk about, I'll bring you back to that super charismatic nucleus, that really fun little group of cells that responds to lightness and darkness, that kind of regulates your 24-hour cycle. I know it's a big word, but that little group of cells controls the production of melatonin. So when there is less light, this super charismatic nucleus will tell the brain to make more melatonin, which makes you feel sleepy. And cortisol is kind of the opposite of melatonin. This is the stress hormone, but we need a little bit of it. The stress hormone tells the body to wake up. So this hormone is needed in small amounts, but when you're chronically stressed and this hormone is in the blood in excessive amounts, it reduces melatonin because these two hormones are inversely related. So when cortisol is high, melatonin is low, and vice versa. So cortisol gets released when you're exposed to light. How many of you watch TV before bed? Or look at your phone before bed, or read the news, or emails, or whatever? That blue light emitting from those devices, from our televisions and screens, tells the body to wake up. It's not great for going to sleep, although I'm certainly guilty of using you know, those devices as well before bed. But just know that it can be harder for you to fall asleep when you're using those things, because that light is going right into your eyeballs, telling your brain, hey, there's light coming in, it's time to wake up. Ghrelin is the hormone associated with appetite. So we say grr, like your stomach is growling, stimulating your appetite. This hormone is secreted by our stomach, and it's diminished with lack of sleep. So sleep deprivation studies have shown that a loss of sleep can increase the ratio of ghrelin to this other hormone, leptin, which makes you feel full. So leptin is secreted by our fat cells, and it signals satiety. It's time to be full. But without enough adequate sleep at night, these hormones basically say we're hungrier and we can't get full. So we tend to crave high carb, high fat foods because those foods are very easily absorbed and they turn into energy fast. So you tend to crave sugar, basically, and high fat foods. Not ideal for when you're trying to lose weight or when your body is already set up to gain weight or to be in kind of that position where it's not optimal for your metabolism. So we crave high fat, high sugar foods, and we tend to eat a little bit more after a night of sleep deprivation. So kind of closing up the sleep topic here and switching over to stress. This is much more optimal when I have a room of people that we can actually talk about. But everyone maybe pick up something that is in front of you. Let's say a glass of water, if you have it. If not, you can learn by listening. So you're holding a glass of water or so. How heavy is it? It may be 8 ounces or so, doesn't matter. The trick is that it gets heavier the longer you hold it. And this is the same with stress. As you carry something along in a stressful situation, a small amount, not a big deal. You can hold a cup of water, but can you hold a cup of water for half hour, an hour, a week, a year? Stress builds up. It becomes much, much harder to manage as time goes on. So we're kind of switching gears here, talking more about stress, and then we'll go back to strategies to manage sleep and stress. So it'll kind of come together. So the stress hormones. What is stress? What is the stress response? So we are either stressed or we are not. There is no a little bit stressed. Your body actually goes through an entire physiological change when you are stressed. It releases cortisol, it releases epinephrine, it releases norepinephrine. These are your fight or flight hormones. They tell the body to get away from danger. And your body does not know if you are being chased by a lion or if you just have a lot of things to get done at work. It doesn't understand the difference. It just knows that you are in immediate danger and that you need to get out of that danger. And its reaction is to protect you from a life-threatening situation because it doesn't understand what, a little bit of work is. So when cortisol is released, the body reacts. The brain gets the signal that something is wrong and we need to fix it. So what happens is our muscles tighten. We get ready to fight or run. There's energy, blood sugar increases because all of the energy, all of your blood goes to your arms and your legs in case you need to run or fight. It goes away from your GI tract, so it's not digesting food properly, which can lead to constipation, diarrhea, and a whole host of other problems. You basically become kind of irritable and unfriendly because your body is telling you to withdraw and that you need to be left alone. So when cortisol releases, especially in huge amounts in the blood because it thinks that you are in a dangerous situation, you're instantly alert. Your heart rate increases, blood moves away from your organs into your extremities, like I talked about. And when the brain gets a signal that all is well, this reaction is turned off and the hormones go back to their normal levels, which is, always just a little bit in the blood to keep you kind of awake and alert. But if you are always stressed and the hormones don't reset, you have these physiological changes that are still occurring in your body and making it really challenging to kind of live your normal life. So acute stress, a small amount, it's important, it's healthy, it keeps you accountable, it keeps you awake, it keeps you alert. Very important to have a small amount of stress. That's just, oh, I need to turn something in and I got to get it done right away. Okay, half hour, an hour, it's done. Your levels go back to normal. But chronic stress, your heart is working harder. Your blood is pumping faster, so your blood pressure is increased. Increased blood clotting. So again, chemicals are secreted to keep your blood a little bit thicker, just in case you were to get cut or something happens, and then you can clot, an injury right away. Increased respiration. So your pulse quickens, your breathing increases, your blood sugar increases. We become a little bit bloated. Our bodies basically say this is not time for normal behavior. So sex drive is plummeted. We can't pay attention, we can't concentrate, we can't make good decisions. Basically, that prefrontal cortex of your brain says, nope, it's not a good time to focus on this. I'm focused on saving your life right now. So your immune system plummets. It's not important at this moment. Your memory, not quite as important. Again, your body thinks it's time to save your life. So if you are chronically stressed, your body kind of forgets what it feels like to be relaxed. And kind of thinking about what all of these things do. Increased blood pressure, increased blood sugar, increases your risk for diabetes and heart disease. Every single organ in your body, including your brain, has to work harder when you're stressed. So harder to think clearly, harder to make good decisions. One very interesting little fact I read, with just one night of sleep deprivation, so that's less than 6 hours, cortisol was 37% higher with just one night. So the body responds pretty quickly to a lack of sleep by increasing that hormone that makes you feel awake, which again could lead to chronic problems if this is happening every single night. So cortisol as a hormone is regulated by the circadian rhythm. It's secreted in kind of a wave-like pattern. So it peaks at 9 a.m., which is, by the way, the perfect time to wake up if your schedule can allow for that, although I think most of us, that just doesn't happen. And then it decreases throughout the day and increases again throughout the night at certain times. Again, it's an inverse relationship with melatonin. Chronically high levels, like I talked about, can lead to a lot of different conditions, and can lead to weight gain because it also promotes fat storage. Because again, the body says we need to do everything we can to save your life right now. So on the brain specifically, very interestingly, I think, can actually affect the structure and function of your brain. So the amygdala is part of your brain responsible for fear, negativity, anger, and we actually see that it's bigger in people that have chronic stress. This part of the brain is bigger. The prefrontal lobes, which are responsible for decision-making, planning, good judgment, impulse control, they're actually a little bit smaller. And then the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory, doesn't quite work as well. It's a little underactive. So the brain actually changes because it's trying unsuccessfully, be it, to produce pleasure and avoid pain. During stress, its focus is on basic survival. And as humans, we have this really unique capacity to worry about imaginary danger or future events. Oh no, I have something I need to worry about that's happening a week from now, which can help you prepare. It's a good thing, but it can also lead to anxiety and, of course, that chronic stress. So we have to find strategies to mitigate that stress and also recognize the stress before it becomes too big of a problem. And also to note, if you're feeling afraid right now, because I'm sure I'm scaring everyone, all of these things can definitely be maybe not reversed, but you can make really significant changes by making little changes to your day, basically telling yourself, hey, I'm okay, I'm safe, taking deep breaths, all of that. That really goes a long way to decrease the stress response and make you feel much, much better. And of course, it waits till the end of this presentation to give you all of the wonderful things, tips and strategies and whatnot. But we will certainly go over that to help you make little changes that can reduce stress and improve sleep quality. This is just the scaring you part of the presentation first. So sleep and appetite. Really interestingly, sleep and weight gain are a bi-directional, pretty vicious cycle. So sleep deprivation can cause weight gain, and weight gain increases your risk for obstructive sleep apnea, which can further disturb sleep. It can increase your risk for like heartburn, osteoarthritis, a couple of different things. So losing weight, you actually get a better night's sleep, and if you get a better night's sleep, you can lose more weight. So, you know, being part of this Livea plan and focusing on your health and well-being, we certainly have an opportunity to improve sleep quality just simply by participating like you're doing. So sleep and physical activity. I don't know about you guys, but after a night of poor sleep, I do not want to exercise. That's the last thing I want to do. I want to go take a nap instead. But even if you are able to go exercise after a night of sleep deprivation, you're really just not able to do quite as much. You're not able to do as many reps, not able to run quite as far, not able to walk that extra half mile or little bit because your body is just fatigued. Not only that, when you do exercise, your body's not able to repair the tissues as well or build muscle as well if you're sleepy, because sleep is required to release that hormone associated with growth of this tissue. So we don't quite want to do as much, just kind of promoting importance of sleep overall. So why is sleep so important? It's important for healing, healing the entire body, recovering from your day, repairing tissues and hormones, and restoring the chemicals, regenerates things. It just kind of helps with recovery from your busy day. And it replenishes the chemicals that make you feel happy, rewarded, excited to accomplish tasks. It's kind of that time to protect those precious memories by storing them in the memory vault. And it's time to consolidate information so that you can recall it the next day or in the future. So here are some of my tips for how to improve sleep quality getting ready for bed. I like to start just a couple hours before by starting to turn the lights out, getting yourself ready for bed. If you know that your 8 hours of sleep will be, you have to wake up by 7 a.m., that means you got to be asleep by 11. That means you should probably be in bed by 10:45 or so. So what's it going to take to be in bed by that time? Does that mean an hour before bed, you're brushing your teeth, getting yourself ready, finishing up, little activities, doing the dishes, whatever you need to do? And I also like to prepare for the next day. Maybe get some lunch ready if you have time for it. Maybe set some clothes out. Do these little tasks now so that you can save some precious time in the morning. About an hour before bed, that's when it's time to start participating in calming activities. You can certainly still be watching TV at that time, but maybe reading a book or taking a bath or something really relaxing. This shouldn't be the time for exercise, shouldn't be the time for running around the house doing chores unless it's absolutely necessary. But if you can avoid it, ideally you're starting to calm down an hour before bed. About half hour before bed, finish any last remaining tasks and start to head to your bedroom. Maybe read in bed for a little while before you turn the lights out, or use the no blue light section of your phone or something. There's lots of opportunities for that. About 15 minutes before bed, you should definitely be doing some type of calming activity. You can stretch a little bit, maybe meditate, read, whatever works for you. Keep those lights low for sure. And if you can, avoid using electronics. The goal is to provide a relaxing, calming environment. And so that your body knows when it's time to get into bed, it's time to go to sleep. Your brain can actually be trained for that. So ideally, there's not a lot going on in the bedroom. It shouldn't be the place where you watch TV. It shouldn't be the place where you do your exercises, so that your brain can actually build a relationship with the bedroom that says, all right, this is a place to relax. About 5 minutes before bed, bring yourself to a calm place. Try to breathe deeply, and this is the time where you can, of course, fall asleep. One strategy I use, because I certainly have trouble falling asleep, my brain gets really active. I want to do a lot of things around that time. That's when, usually as soon as I lay in bed, my brain says, oh, let's think of all the wonderful things we can do someday. So it was actually a hypnotherapist that helped me with this technique, but I will certainly share it with you guys. So if you have trouble falling asleep, I like to imagine myself in a happy place. So for me, that is on a beach. I like to pretend I am on a tropical island or a beautiful, part of Italy or something wonderful like that. But this is your happy place. So for some people, it's the forest, what have you. So I'm going to bring you to my beach. Deep breath. You are lying on the sand, you can hear the waves rushing onto the beach. You can hear the seagulls making their little chirps. You can feel a little bit of wind touching your skin, but you also feel the sun beating down. It's nice and warm, but it's not too hot. You hear a little bit of wind rustling through the trees. You smell the salty water. You just take a couple of deep breaths. Focus on your toes, your heels, your legs, and your back, all sinking into the soft sand. You take a deep breath and you let it out slowly. And you are calmer and you are relaxed. And this feels really nice when you're lying in bed, wanting to fall asleep, but your mind is racing. So you have to kind of bring yourself to this place where you feel calm, you feel relaxed, and you can't think of anything else. You can't think of your to-do list because you are so busy painting this beautiful picture of this wonderful place where you're at. So that's kind of my little tip for falling asleep, especially focusing on each body part as it sinks deeper into the bed. It really helps. That visualization can actually help make you feel sleepier. This technique also works for reducing stress. So if you find yourself at work and you are feeling very stressed, close your eyes and bring yourself to your happy place. Take 3 deep breaths, and I promise you'll feel much calmer after that. And it kind of tells the body, hey, we don't need to be stressed. This isn't a life or death situation. She wouldn't be deep breathing like this if it was. So it kind of reminds the body that you are safe and protected. Tips for a better night's sleep, and in the comment section, we can absolutely go over other tips that other people in this chat might have. But essentially, here are mine. Avoiding high-fat meals before bed. They are slower to digest, so it's harder to digest them. It takes a longer time, and then it can also produce heartburn or reflux. So trying to avoid those. Try to skip meals or try not to skip meals, or avoid nighttime cravings. So, making sure that your belly has something in it, but it isn't overly full. Sometimes if you're not eating dinner, you're going to be craving some snacks at night. So make sure that you get a nice healthy dinner in. Try to limit fluids before bed. I know we're really pushing that 64 ounces of water, but try to get that in earlier in the day because I don't want you to have to wake up in the middle of the night to use the restroom. Limiting caffeine containing foods, avoiding late day naps, of course, especially ones that are longer than 20 minutes. So 20 minutes or so, that's a short cat nap. You can certainly do it, but a longer nap, not so great. Try to avoid oversleeping, so longer than that 9 hours. Try to get your exercise in a little earlier in the day. Fun fact, getting a lot of light first thing in the morning can kind of help reset that 24-hour clock and wake you up. So that might be something to utilize. Try to get some bright lights around, especially as you're waking up. Avoiding snacks that might cause indigestion, especially if you are sensitive to that. Caffeine certainly increases your heart rate. It also acts as a diuretic, so try to avoid caffeine within 6 hours of bedtime. And the exercise component there, it's great for helping you fall asleep. However, exercise does secrete the stress hormone cortisol, activating kind of those mechanisms in the brain that make you feel awake. So try to exercise at least 3 hours before bedtime or earlier in the day. Any kind of light can suppress secretion of melatonin, but blue light does it more powerfully. So try to avoid those light emitting devices or use the warm lights components on your phone or your iPad or whatever you're using. In one study that I read, participants took longer to fall asleep and also had less REM sleep and higher alertness before bedtime after reading on a light emitting device. So it might be better to get a printed book right before bedtime. Kind of more little tips for a better night's sleep. Avoid alcohol. Again, remember that it can decrease your time spent in REM sleep, so try to avoid alcohol before bed. Maybe a cup of tea would be a better solution. It can even be cold tea because it's getting kind of warm outside now. Reduce light around the house, like I had mentioned, a couple hours before bedtime. You can use dimmers or turn off some switches, whatever works for you. Keep your core body temperature cool. You can use limited blankets or weighted blankets, or make sure you have a fan around. Your sleeping environment should be really comfortable. It should be inviting. It should be a wonderful place to be. So make sure it is that for you, and train your brain for bed. Take everything but sleep and romance out of the bedroom, like I had mentioned earlier. So, you know, if you want to read, maybe do it on the couch. If you want to watch TV, again, do it in another room. And your brain will actually build a relationship with the bed and just sleep. So if you're having a hard time sleeping because your brain is busy, I've heard a lot of people have told me that this is the thing that keeps them up. Our COO actually gave me a great tip of keeping a to-do list or some kind of paper and pen next to the nightstand or maybe in the bathroom, just so it's readily available. You can go write down whatever your brain is thinking, and maybe it can be out of your mind for that moment and you can actually fall asleep. And then stress management, what can you do? Everybody manages their stress a little bit differently, but I think for the most part, these are the big ones. So finding a coping mechanism, for me, like I said, it's bringing myself to my happy place. Maybe you have an unhealthy method of dealing with stress, like for example, you know, drinking alcohol or, you know, whatever other behaviors we have. Buying things, I'm sure, you know, shopping is an unhealthy way of dealing with stress sometimes. Maybe it's not the least healthy one though, but maybe these can be turned into healthy ones. So drawing, walking, yoga, Tai Chi, call a friend, volunteer, give someone a hug, whatever works for you. You know, there's adult coloring books, there's all sorts of stuff that you can use to help kind of reduce that stress and tell your body, hey, we're not stressed right now. This isn't a life or death situation. You know, maybe take a bath, whatever works for you. But these are the kind of the top ones: playing with a pet, exercising, meditating, music, relaxing, that sort of stuff, all do help. And then lastly, for stress management, there are certainly some strategies that I have to help reduce stress. Adequate sleep every night, of course, 7 to 8 hours is ideal. You can also follow an anti-inflammatory diet. So this is definitely reflective of the Livea plans, but basically avoiding a lot of sugar, avoiding a lot of high-fat foods, lots of vegetables, good quality lean proteins. If you are maintaining your weight, good healthy fruits, whole grains, that sort of stuff. Also omega-3 rich foods. Obviously, we encourage everyone to take an omega-3 supplement. One of the reasons is that it's an anti-inflammatory food, so it can actually help promote stress management. Small, frequent, balanced meals. Again, very reflective of the Livea plan. Don't skip breakfast. Try to eat within an hour of waking up. It can actually mitigate the stress response on your body. Getting some exercise for sure, even if it's just 5 to 10 minutes of walking, especially right now where you can do it outside and it's nice and warm. Participating in some relaxation techniques, maybe deep breathing or meditation. Definitely maintain supportive relationships. I know during weight loss, it can be a really challenging time. It can be, you might need a little extra support. So if you don't have someone at home or friends that you can call to kind of help you through that, definitely call Livea. We are here specifically to support you. So we can absolutely provide strategies and relief in any way that you need it. And then of course, avoid excess caffeine because it's definitely not great for our stress response. So in conclusion, get some exercise, move a little bit, eat well, and definitely get good sleep. here are just a few of my references, and I realize I don't think I actually kind of discussed any of these as I was kind of starting this. So my name is Lisa Paradiso. I am a registered dietitian at Livea. I don't think I presented myself in the beginning. I apologize for that. But I did quite a bit of research, as I mentioned, kind of that 3-month research presentation in collaboration at a mental hospital. But I also really just am so passionate about these two topics. I think managing stress and improving sleep is the most important thing you can do for your health, aside from nutrition. But yeah, that's kind of my background there. It looks like I've got a question here. Does your stomach feel sick during stress because of blood going to the extremities? Yes, it certainly can. So everybody, this is going to affect every person a little bit differently. But certainly your stomach can feel very uncomfortable when you are undergoing stress because, one, the blood is moving away from there, so your digestion is affected. But also stress, just a whole physiological reaction occurs. Remember, your muscles are tight, so your stomach is, within a wall of muscles. Your stomach is a muscle. All of your intestines are muscles. And the peristalsis, that function of how food is passed through your intestines, it's just kind of squeezed through. Those muscles are tight, so it can really upset your stomach and your digestion. So certainly that's one of the factors, the blood going to the extremities, but also just simply because of the whole physiological reaction going on in the body. Any other questions? Anything I can answer, or needing additional resources or tips or anything? All right, well then I think we are all set.